Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend and coach, John Opolewski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm doing great. I'm excited about our topic today.
Yeah, me too. It's funny. Before we get to today's topic, let me say last week's topic was one of the most fun I've had doing a podcast in a long time with you. And we talked about why vision. And today we're going to take a step forward from vision into something that's crucial to making vision happen. And you want to introduce us to our topic today?
Sure, the title of this one is Why Values, and you might be thinking, "Wow, you guys aren't real creative with your titling," but why vision, why values? Last week, Jim, as you referred to, we talked about vision being answering the question where. It's
Yeah.
it's a destination, and in football terms, it's the end zone. And
Yeah.
um, and so today, I'd like to talk about values because I think a church or a business won't get to their end zone without fuel. You have to
Yeah.
have fuel,
Yeah.
organizational fuel, to make forward progress. And the culture created by meaningful values provides that fuel.
Yes.
That's my premise.
I
What do you
and I
what do you think
agree.
about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, let's take last week's podcast and say we have great vision, put in an organization with terrible values. What's going to
Mm,
happen? It's not going to be the vision. It's going to be division. It's going to be I don't trust. I don't believe. I don't understand. Why is this time different than the last time when you failed me? So I believe that this is maybe the last week was the minivan. This week is the gas we're going to put in it, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the values is the minivan and the vision is the gas that goes in that actually takes us somewhere. But without it doesn't matter what you have if you don't have values.
yeah, I think we all know of organizations that had sizable visions without
Yeah,
a healthy culture, and we read
yeah,
about it in the paper. Not in the paper.
yeah,
Who gets the paper anymore? We read about it. We read about it online uh,
yeah,
too often, and uh,
yeah,
and so that's why I'd like us to explore values today, what they are, and why
yeah. Right.
the
Why they're
leader
so important.
needs to take
Is
them
it does it seem
seriously.
like value like vision? We need a vision, but I don't think I've ever heard the rallying cry. Values. We need values. It's almost like it's like we have to be careful, right? Because again, vision without values is failure. Just like values without vision is failure.
Correct.
But we're talking about the mechanisms that make this thing actually function. Is not the vision which you need. It's the values that give
Yes,
all right, the synergy of the group to make it happen.
I agree. So vision answers the question where, values answers the question how.
Yeah,
How
right on.
how do we behave? How do we behave around here?
Yeah,
I think they're the organizational rumble strips of a company,
yeah,
of an organization, of a church.
yeah.
Um, and if you're listening or watching today and wondering, well, how do I'm not sure I have values. Our organization has them. If we do have them, I don't think we've talked about them in 5 years.
Yeah.
How do I start getting my arms around this subject? So I'd like to talk about that
Yeah.
um,
Do it.
today. So first, I think the first thing is to understand what they're not.
Okay.
Values are not aspirational
Hmm.
primarily. Um, I think there's a degree of some aspiration when it comes to values. Like
Right.
I think there's always some kind of gap between the value and the in our actual experience
Hmm.
of the value, or how closely aligned we are to that value. But if the gap is 10 miles wide, Jim,
Right.
that's not a value. That's that
No.
core.
Yeah.
That's a dream. Well, it's not even a dream. I think that's a fantasy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're not aspirational.
Mm.
I don't think values are. I think Patrick Lencioni coined this phrase, permission to play
Hmm.
values. For example, some organizations list integrity as one of their core values. And I mean, and we get that, right? Integrity matters.
Sure. Yeah.
But integrity simply a behavior that's required just to get on the field?
Hmm.
I think it should be. And,
Absolutely.
and and to me, integrity is not a differentiator. I mean, I think everybody, that's just like, hey, if you don't have integrity, you don't even get on the field of play
Not
with
here.
us. I
Yeah.
believe this core values, Jim, are organizational differentiators.
Okay.
They
Big
make
words.
they make your organization unique.
Okay.
Um, you know, they make you different than the next organization down the street, the next church
Hmm.
down the street.
Yeah.
We have 4 core values. I don't want to dive into those today because we don't have enough time to do that.
Right.
But I think the way we operate as a company with those 4 values makes
Yeah.
us different than other
Yes.
organizations. Doesn't make us better. It makes us
Right.
different than
Yeah.
other organizations who do what you do.
Right.
And so they're not aspirational. They're not permission to play. I'd like you to comment on that point right there.
Well, I'll name one. You say you don't want to get into it, but the one that stands out the most to me is we believe in win-win relationships.
Yep.
And that was new to me. If I've challenged you on anything, just from my understanding of healthy relationships that I've learned from Converge and from you, it's that win-win. I'd be like, no, I'm the pastor, I should lose. I'm the father, I should lose. I'm the husband, I should lose. I should be dying for everybody around me. And in doing so, sometimes I've neglected myself. I haven't relationships haven't been healthy because they're all one-sided. So
Right.
I think having that, like, no, this isn't something we say, this is something we insist on. So Jim, if you're going to do this, these are the rules by which we do these things. You'll be compensated for them. You don't do it for free. You'll be expected to do it up to the Converge quality that we expect. We'll
Yes.
be, and if you don't win, then we haven't won. We refuse to win. If we're the only ones who win, we're not going to use anyone, and we're not going to let anyone use you. So
Right.
I think the healthy values create healthy systems. They create healthy interactions that allow healthy people to serve in meaningful ways. So
Right.
I'm a real proponent of this. And if you'd asked me before we became friends and started, you served me as a coach, and then we started working together, I didn't know this. This was a mystery to me. As long as I lost, as long as someone else won, that was what was important. And that's shifted because I realize now helping everybody that asks for help is not necessarily helping everybody.
Right.
Insisting on mutual respect,
Right.
insisting on a mutual honor and dignity being granted. So don't come in here and beef me and beat
Right.
me up and then leave because you're my employee. It's like, stop. I will not be disrespected, and I won't disrespect you. Those are
Right.
things that I've learned from Converge. Been very, very helpful to my mental health because I don't dread a single conversation anymore because of that one value.
Mm. And that does my heart well. That just
Yeah.
makes me feel so good. And Jim's giving you a little window into our organization and a window into probably at least a half a dozen conversations he and I have had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
weren't all comfortable conversations
Nope.
about
Not
this
for me. They were
particular.
for you, but yeah. Yeah. Not for
Yeah.
me. I was the one getting corrected.
And so it's just cool to see how that has just settled in your own spirit. So
Yeah.
um, so understand that core values are not aspirational primarily. They're not permission to play, just get on the field values.
Yeah.
How do we identify them? This is where a lot of organizations struggle, or
Mhm.
a lot of leaders say, I don't know where to start. So
Yeah.
here's a couple of questions or several questions to ask that I think will help you get started. Make sure you've
Okay.
got something to write with as you're
Yeah.
asking yourself as a leader these questions. What do we, and this is Jenny Catron, one of our friends here on the podcast,
Yeah.
actually, gave us a couple of these questions. She said, what do we look like when we're at our best organizationally?
Yeah. Great question.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Write that down. Is this trait or series of traits natural and inherent for us? And has it
Hmm.
been apparent in our organization for a long time?
Right.
And here's another one she added, and I thought this was good. What do we wish we looked like at our best?
Right.
Because Jenny taught me this, that there is a degree of aspiration to values, but she puts it this way. She says it shouldn't be so aspirational that it's laughable.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
her words, not mine. And
Yeah.
and so those are some good starters, and these will be in the show notes. So don't
Yeah.
worry if you don't have to write feverishly here. These
Yeah.
questions will be in the show notes for you. Here's one that I've posed to many organizations, Jim. If you could clone anyone in your organization, who would that be?
Yeah. And
And,
why, right?
and
Yeah.
immediately
Yeah.
they have a list of 4 or 5 people. And here comes the next
Yeah.
question. Why?
Yes. Yeah.
What
Right.
stands out about them that would make you want 10 more just like them?
Yeah.
Now you're starting to get kind of the seedlings again of values. What that is telling
Mhm.
you as a leader is this is what's important to me. I
Right.
think values are more identified than they are created
Hmm.
in that sense. That I think you already,
Yeah.
in the recesses of your mind, you know what's important to you.
Yeah.
You know how you want the
Yeah.
organization to behave, but you just need some help getting it to front and center in your thinking. What do you think about that second piece here, Jim?
Yeah. We were talking kind of between podcasts about the thought of is culture a synonym to values, and
Right.
maybe yes, maybe no, they're close, right? But I think having that our culture is a collection of our values being seen. So
Yes.
they're the building blocks of our
Being
culture.
lived out, right?
Yes, yeah. So I think in that sense, this is the value of this. The value of this is culture is what people do when no one tells them what to do. Well, where does that culture come from? It comes from agreed on, observable, consistent values being lived out.
Right.
So the one we talked about this probably a year ago. I remember I was going through something at the time. I had a person come in and was yelling at me and was
Mhm.
all upset and was storming off. And I said, "Stop." So he stopped. Like, "What do you mean stop?" And like I'm going to do a fist fight with him. I said, "We don't behave this way. No one
Right.
on my team, no one in volunteer service, not a stranger who walks through the door is allowed to speak disrespectfully to anyone else on this team. So you're going to come back and we're going to work this out." And what was interesting is he did, because
Mm.
it wasn't me confronting him or comforting him, or it was we don't behave this way. And so for some reason that sentence constrained him enough to come back and be reasonable until we worked out the issue. We don't
Yeah.
behave this way. I don't know where that came from. What do I point to? Which of the mantras and vision statements? And I don't have that. But it was funny. Because he'd been a part of the organization long enough to see that that was true. He stopped because
Yes.
I feel like we were violating each other. So I can be mad at you, but for some reason I can't violate the culture, the values of this
Mhm.
culture. And
Yep.
he stopped and we worked it out. So this is not this is not an optional thing, is it? This
No,
helps
no, it's not
again
optional. It's
constrain.
not optional. It
Yeah,
it isn't. We're going to get to that in just a minute when we talk about accountability around
yeah,
these values, Jim. Let's talk a little bit about how do you amplify the. So we talked about what they're not, how to identify them. How do you
yeah.
amplify the
Right.
values? I think we can add clarity and punch to our identified values by asking again, Jim, so much of this is asking yourself the right questions, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we should I think one of our teammates, actually, I think Mary Seltzer wrote a book, one of our teammates,
See,
on asking questions, so
love it.
look up Mary Seltzer and you could find that resource.
Yeah.
But here's 3 questions that I challenge every group that is wrestling with their values and identifying and understanding them. I ask them to answer these 3 questions. What does that value mean?
Hmm.
Why does it matter? And when like you kind of your facial expression when I said why does it matter, I can tell you were thinking about that. So
Yeah,
I usually
yeah,
follow it up with this. What's there to gain if we behave this way?
yeah,
And what's there to lose if we don't?
yeah,
So that's the why does this matter? And then the
yeah.
third question is what specific behaviors are behind each value?
Hmm.
So for you, Jim, you said one of our values is win-win partnerships.
Yeah.
What is that? What are the behaviors behind that? One, we are committed to our customers winning.
Yes.
Our customers win when they get healthier.
Yes.
They win when they acquire a skill they didn't have before.
Hmm.
They win when they feel more confident now than they did when they started with us. Those are
Absolutely.
wins for them when they have breakthroughs, when they put
Mhm.
systems in place that help them be able to sustain the life that God is bringing to their church.
Yeah.
Those are wins for our clients, but we're going to win too.
Yeah.
So we don't apologize for charging.
Yeah.
We need to win.
Yeah.
Relationships, we win by gaining trust. You know what a huge win for us is in the win-win partnerships is when one of our clients talks to somebody else and says, you need to have Converge Coaching come help you.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah.
See, Jim, I believe this, that relationships that aren't mutual aren't sustainable.
Right. Yes.
They're
Absolutely.
not sustainable. And so those are some of the behaviors behind that value. And so taking time to think about, okay, I know what it means now. And we drill down and it's a very uncomfortable like half hour with a church or an hour. What does it mean? And I
Yeah.
just pretend I know nothing. Like, okay, I don't
Yeah.
understand that. Explain that. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Really, what is and people are writing down feverishly. And why does it matter? Who cares? Who cares about this? Who cares if
Yeah.
this gets followed or not or is lived out? And then let's get specific. What are the behaviors behind this value so that we can know,
Yeah.
you know, objectively whether we're
Yeah.
living it out or we're not. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. I again that back to my problem from a year ago. Part of our culture is we resolve issues face to face in a calm tone of voice between ourselves. And if that can't happen, we bring in a third person that's a neutral party, hopefully somewhere up the food chain in authority to help us
Mhm.
resolve it. We don't go to bed angry at each other. We don't let things be unresolved. We don't. So those are those behaviors, right? We didn't just
Yes,
say, "Hey, we're going to work at peace together." That's too nebulous. What does that mean? How long does that take? What's the
right.
process? But by putting that language behind it, by saying this is how we live out that value. Now there's an expectation, and when it happens and we applaud it, hey guys, I just want to say thanks to Fred and Barney. In the last episode of the Flintstones, they had this conflict, and they brought in Wilma. Wilma helped them resolve it, and Bam Bam and Pebbles are in the background clapping. And you have to be 40 years old to get the analogy of the names I just used, but
That's right.
we are, and then they go, oh, that's great, good for them. That's so now we're celebrating what would have been separating before culture had mandates and expectations and
Right.
language. So it's and I know I'm dealing with just kind of the responding to bad things, but it's also the good things. It's the
Right.
you know if
Celebrating
if
the wins,
if
right?
if Converge isn't in a position of being a professional company that gives professional advice that employs professional people, then why would you call to begin with? But the only way to have those people that answer the phone is to they have to be compensated for doing the other things they were doing. They're now being compensated so they can be there to answer the phone. And
Right.
it's not nobody goes to the doctor and well, we all complain about the price. I mean, it's a bad example, but we understand that in order for him to be a doctor, he can't be a mechanic too. He or she
Mhm.
has to be a doctor. And so we have these specialists in our lives. Thank God we do that
Yes.
that have dedicated themselves to be excellent in areas that we can trust them in, and Converge, no less than any other professional, is in that role.
So So let's recap here a little bit, and then I
Yeah,
want to talk about one more thing. We talked about what values aren't.
yeah,
They're not aspirational, they're not permission to play. If you can think about values and culture as fuel for your
mhm,
organization, that's an important picture, I think, in your mind. We talked about how to identify the values, how to amplify them or give punch to them, right?
yeah, yeah.
Let's talk for a minute, Jim, and then we'll wrap up about how we can use core values to actually shape the kind of culture we need.
Yes, yeah,
There's four things real quick. Can I just say this too, that what we're talking about here will take you from start to finish to get to a place where you feel like you're fluent with it. It'll take you a good 6 months.
yeah. It should.
So just
Yeah,
take your time.
yeah,
Don't be in a rush. Don't say I got to get the value thing done in a hurry. Just take your time
yeah.
with this because it really truly matters. You said in the beginning, we can have a great vision, man, but without the right culture, all kinds of bad things can happen.
Yeah.
And we probably won't get to the finish line to the end zone.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we can use the core values to shape culture. One, teach.
Yeah.
Can I encourage leaders to create space to talk about these behavioral values, these rumble strips in gatherings large and small?
Yeah.
There are times when it's one-on-one, where I see one of our teammates living out one of our 4 values, and I send them an email or I shoot them a
Yeah.
text or I call them on the phone and say, man, I'm so proud of you
Yeah.
for living that out, and just applaud that. So keeping the values in front and center, first of all, with you and your team, and then the larger organization. Teach.
Yeah.
Second, model. Values are more caught than taught.
Hmm.
And by the way, you and your leaders are the culture.
Yes.
The culture starts with you, and it cascades down through the organization. We had Josh Spurlock several episodes ago talk about neuroception.
Yeah.
And one of my new favorite phrases, neuroception, because it gave
Yeah.
me language, Jim, for something that I've observed for a dozen years and couldn't put words to it.
Yeah.
And Josh explained it this way: as a leader, what is going on the inside of me, in my nervous system,
Hmm.
gets communicated to the people around me. It gets communicated to their nervous system.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what is going on the inside of you is going to get cascaded down to your
Yeah.
team, into the people you lead.
Yeah.
And so model the values, celebrate. You already talked about it.
Yeah.
When somebody in the organization hits the mark, make a big deal of it. Reward
Yeah.
the behavior. I think whatever gets rewarded gets repeated. I know that
Yeah.
because I raised 4 boys, and
Yeah.
you raised two boys.
Yeah.
And then the last piece here. And I know we're throwing a ton at you today.
Good.
But we're talking about where's the teeth in all of this? How do we use it to shape culture? And the last piece is accountability.
Hmm.
I think in
Yeah.
organizations that are healthy, core values actually mean something. The team members understand them. They know what they mean. They know why they matter. They know the behaviors associated with each one of those, and they hold each other accountable to those
Yeah.
behaviors. And that goes both ways. That's bi-directional, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just top down. So, I think I've lost count in the last
Mm.
8 to 9 years of how many times a teammate would say, John, I think you're bumping up against the rumble strip.
Yeah.
John, I think you need to course correct. And we have given the team permission to act like
Sure.
that and talk like that.
Absolutely.
Nobody's
Yeah.
yelling, nobody's screaming. It's respectful, but there's accountability there. So
Yeah.
what do you think about just this core values to shape culture idea, Jim, real quick?
Yeah. I like what you said about you and your leaders are the culture of your organization.
Hmm.
Someone said this years ago, but it really stuck with me that people learn what's important by watching what important people do.
Hmm.
And that is contagious. You're talking about the nervous system syncing up with other nervous systems. If being a bully is valued in your organization, then you're going to attract a lot of bullies. And
That's right.
that's it. If being a pushover is that it attracts that. You can teach what you know, but you reproduce what you are in
Yes.
leadership. And I don't mean you, but I mean the core, the leaders reproduce what they are. So back to that thought of who's doing a great job and what do you want more of? Who's the people? I think that's a great thing to help us with this language, because that helps us then say, this is what I want more of. And I value the people that bring this to my team. And again, every time we do that, we're building this culture because we're celebrating it. What's rewarded is repeated, all the things you said. So I like, probably my favorite thing you said so far is don't be in a rush. This is not a homework
Right.
assignment that has to be turned in on Tuesday.
That's right.
When is this done? when you can no longer add something to it nor subtract something from it that makes it more meaningful.
Yeah,
So if
that's
that
good.
takes 6 months, that's a good 6 months. If that
That's
takes
right.
6 minutes, I doubt you just to find the right language. Even if you have the right values to
Yeah.
communicate it, you need the right language. So something
Yes.
that's punchy and catchy and sticky. So it isn't just what you know, it's what everybody can repeat. That we believe in win-win relationships. I know that because it's short, it's concise, it says a lot with 10 words. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, six
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
you know. So it's crazy how 6 words have affected my life, but it's important, it's modeled, it's repeated, it's rewarded, and
Yeah.
that culture has changed not just my culture but the culture of that which I serve. So
Mhm.
I this is not a small thing. God does big things through values.
That's
So
right.
if people stop and pray 3 times a day because that's their value, that's a key part of Daniel's story. If we will not bow to idols, that's one of our values. We have one true
Right.
God. Well, that's a key part of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's story. These are what comes out of these is huge. So don't rush it. Don't fake it. Don't
Right.
don't make it an assignment. Believe it. Make it refined, and then release it and live it. And your culture will change. The fruit will change with the culture, and all comes out of these values.
Yeah. And Jim, can I say one last thing before you
Please,
wrap us up here?
yeah,
You know, again, thank you. If you've been watching or listening for the last 2 weeks, we appreciate
yeah,
you joining us and giving us your time. And you might be wondering, still wondering, why should I work on vision so much? Why should I work on values? I think here's a good reason because God has given you work to do that has eternal implications.
yeah, yeah,
The work that you do and the people who help you do that work matter.
yeah,
And those who are the recipients of your collective work, they matter too.
yeah,
And let me just top it off with this. It's so much more fun to work with a team that knows where it's going and how it's going to behave on the way to where they're going.
yeah,
So I hope that's enough to move
yeah,
you off the bench, off the dime here, and really give yourself to thoughtful, meaningful, prayerful time to
yeah.
vision and values. So, Jim, that's what we have.
Right on. Well, leaders lead, and leadership means you know where you're going and how you're going to get there, so others can follow. So, John, thank you for leading us towards being leaders and serving us in such a beautiful way with your wisdom. We greatly appreciate it. Everywhere I go, where there's like a gathering of ministers, people always come up to me and say, "Man, I so appreciate this podcast. It helps me. My staff listens to it." One of the guys creeped me out and said, "I've taken more showers with you than any other man." I'm like, I don't know what to do with that one, but listen to it in the car next time. You're creeping me out. But I we are so glad that it's rewarding to us to know that this is beneficial. So God
Yeah.
bless you. If there's anything we can do to help you, convergecoach.com, connect button. It's right there when you bring up the app or the website. Click on it. Let's spend a half hour talking about what's on your heart, how Converge can serve you. And if we can't, we'll be honest about it. If you need something beyond what we can do, we'll send you to somebody we know that can help. And if it's something that we just don't do, I bet you we know somebody who does. So we are blessed with many friends, and we count you among them. So God bless you. Thanks. Keep going. It's Tuesday. You haven't quit. That's all good stuff. Jesus is one day closer to returning for his church. So work hard today and work smart today. And God bless you as you continue to lead from alignment.